Okay, great. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our day 2 of the webinar series, Education for Sustainable Development. Thank you again for joining us. We at CITL are very excited to be hosting this event together with the Sustainable Department here at AUS. We will start our event today with a panel discussion on learning design for sustainable development. With me, I have 3 outstanding panelists with extensive experience to share with all of us. After the panel discussion, we will have a closing plenary by Mr. Alex Maloof from Schneider Electrics. Alex will talk about the role of higher education, such as AUS, in preparing students with the capacity to have sustainability skills, such as system thinking, future thinking, understanding of diversity and cross-cultural competencies. Finally, our Chancellor, Dr. Susan Mam, will give the closing remark and also will officially end our webinar series. Okay, without further ado, let us begin our panel discussions. So I will start by introducing our 3 panelists. So the first one that I have with me today is Dr. Maria Toro Troconis. She is the international consultant for the United Nations, and she is also the founder of the Learning Design Bootcamp. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you, Norita. Pleasure to be here. Welcome, everyone.
The second, we have Miss Catherine Reedy. She is the learning designer at the Open University UK. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Hello, everybody.
And finally, we have our very own Dr. Muhammad Ibrahim, Professor of Mass Communication at College of Art and Science here at AUS. Welcome, Muhammad.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much, Norita and the team.
Great. Okay, so why don't we start our discussion by each one of you giving a brief overview of your background. So why don't we start with you, Maria?
Sure. Thank you, Norita. Yes, so first of all, again, thank you so much for the invitation. It's great to be here. And with all of you in the panel, that's brilliant. Thank you. My background, I was born in Venezuela in South America quite a few years ago. I won't say how many. I finished my bachelor degree in computer science back in Venezuela. And then I flew to Europe where I've been living for the rest of my life, mainly in the UK and also Sweden, where I did most of my postgraduate studies. I've been always professionally, I've been mainly working in the educational technology sector. And for about 20 years, especially, I have to say, in medical education as well. I spent 10 years working for the Faculty of Medicine at Imperial College London. And I think that marked a lot my focus on educational technology at the time, including my PhD was based on virtual patients in using a game-based learning approach. Most recently, I've been working for different organizations of the United Nations, UNICEF, UNESCO, UNDP, working on different projects, especially since the pandemic hit, because obviously online learning became the norm for everyone. And I've been very honored to be working with different projects. I also, 4 years ago, we set up the Learning Design Bootcamp. And we've been running the bootcamp for 4 years. And this year we are specifically focusing on education for sustainable development. And we'll talk about that later. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Maria. I mean, I wasn't aware that you have all those technical background. No wonder you're so, I guess, so efficient when it comes to technology. Great. Can we go to you, Catherine?
Yes, certainly. Great to be here, actually, and talking to you all. I'm a member of the Open University UK Learning Design team. I've worked in this area of curriculum design and development for around 10 years, and I actually worked for the Open University for almost 21 years in different roles. And I just wonder, who here has studied or taught with the OU? I'm really interested. So either raise a hand or maybe drop a comment into the text chat, because often when I'm speaking to a room of people, people who have had contact with the Open University in one way or another. And the Open University model is to offer supported open learning, providing high quality learning materials, one-to-one tutor support, formative and summative assessment, and also a supportive learning community. And the student population currently is over 175,000 at the last count. There's around 8,000 international students, around 4,000 associate lecturers. 34% of new undergraduates are under 25, 72% already in work. 78% of our students had no previous higher education qualifications on entry, and quite a number would have had no or very few school qualifications. 26% live in the most deprived areas, and over 30,000 students have declared disabilities. We also have students in secure environments, that's prison facilities or similar, who study with the Open University. So that's a quick snapshot of the student body that we're serving. As a learning designer, I'm involved with internal and external projects to design and develop new curriculum, or to upskill teams to apply principles of good design. And that includes facilitating workshops, other staff development activities. I also get involved in mentoring. I'm an experienced mentor, including for Higher Education Academy Fellowship as a senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy. My Open University work is mainly with the Faculty of Business and Law, and also sometimes on the Open University's Access and what they call open box courses. And those courses are to onboard students, to give them the skills and to develop them as lifelong learners, essentially. My background is in digital literacy and embedding skills into the curriculum. I led development of the Open University's digital literacy framework when it was first created back in 2012, something like that, and associated learning materials. And these are part of the Open University's approach to learning design. And this framework has been influential in the higher education sector and beyond. And the Open University modelled its employability framework on the digital literacy framework. So we find frameworks are a useful approach at the Open University to embedding skills and attributes and behaviours, and hence the ESD framework and toolkit is you know, an approach that I think is going to be very beneficial. So just finally to say, one of the highlights of my career has been working on various external projects that aim to develop distance learning capacity and to enhance lifelong learning. That includes countries such as South Africa, Belarus and Myanmar. And these projects supported progress towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 4, but also impacting all other goals by equipping teachers and students with the knowledge and skills to develop the economy, to manage the environment and create a more equal society. And of course, there's the Learning Design Bootcamp, which I've been involved with the last couple of years and we'll talk a bit more about later.
Great, thank you so much, Catherine. I mean, so you have been working there for more than 20 years, about 20 years at the Open University. So basically whatever that we're going right now in terms of digital teaching and learning is nothing for you guys, right? I mean, you already have all the experience in the world when it comes.
We do for students, but we're currently working on how we can make it the best environment for staff as well, because we were office-based formerly.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to learn more about that. Thank you, Catherine. Now let's go to Mohammed. Mohammed, you want to just introduce yourself a little bit? I mean,
yes.
Here, but yes, please.
Thank you, Norita, for this invitation, this event. I'm not going to introduce myself because I am here at the American University of Sharjah. So, but I would like to mention one thing or two, and then. So I am. By training, I'm a social scientist. That's very important to know. And I have a passion for learning. So I am all the time willing and ready and excited and to learn new things. That's very important. And the second thing, it's related to learning. I have a passion also for teaching. So these are the two things that really keep me inspired. And I believe we need to do things that inspire other people. So, and if I can say, I spent over the last 20 years doing research and consultancy work and teaching at several places. Anyway, so one thing I think is, let's do things that inspire other people. It's about inspiration. And that's all. Thank you, Nourita.
Great. Thank you so much, Muhammad. Before we move on with the next question, so maybe Muhammad, you can give a little bit background in a way why we kind of invited you for this session, because of your heavy involvement in the IEN 301 course.
Yeah. So this is one thing. Thank you. This is one thing, and the thing that I should mention is that in 2021, the university, we started a pilot project about a new course that it was designed to be that all the students at the American University should take this course. It's a general education course. It's Innovation, Entrepreneurship Mindset 301. So I'm not going to talk now about the history, but last spring, a team of 3 people under the leadership of Nourita, of course, and then another colleague. So, and myself, we participated at the Learning Design Bootcamp 2021. And it was an amazing learning journey for us. And during this, we had a mentor, and which happens, her name is Maria. She is here. Hi, Maria. Thank you very much for all the work and the inspiration and the leadership. So, and then Maria contacted us, and she wanted to work with us. Why? Because I think we use the syllabus from the Stanford University, because the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Mindset 301 is a result of a collaboration between the Ministry of Education and Stanford University. We adopted their syllabus, but we had the mandate to change, to adapt this global convergence to our local divergence. And we started to adopt new things. And the 3 things we did, one is we added 3 chapters from the original syllabus from Stanford University. We added chapter 5, which is about sustainability principles, and sustainability, chapter 6, sustainability and principle design thinking. And then we added also chapter 11 about sustainable entrepreneurship and leadership. So this is very important, because there was the Commission for Academic Accreditation, and following the directive of the Minister of Education to create the course. And then there was 2 objectives. One is to promote the culture and of sustainability in innovation and entrepreneurship. And the second component was to imbue the sustainability principle in the course. So the course we took from Stanford University, we at the American University, we tried to adapt it to our local context. It's a global content, but we, alhamdulillah, we did well, so that we managed to add sustainability. And then that's, I think, the point where Maria wanted to work with us about this.
Yes. Thank you so much, Muhammad. Yeah. So basically, just to give an overview of the backgrounds of where we're coming from. So Muhammad, myself, and Zinka Bechtek, we work together in this bootcamp so that we're going to have a much better understanding on how to restructure the course, and also how to approach sustainability here at AUS. So that's basically the whole story. So we enrolled in this bootcamp, and we got involved in sustainability, and that is where Rose comes in, because she has the sustainability background. So we have, I guess, a strong team that have different backgrounds, and we are looking into reshaping and restructure this course to make it better. Okay, so now let's go to the next question that I want to get a little bit more from Maria. So I want to go to you again, Maria. So why don't you talk a little bit about the co-design education for development project that you are doing at the moment? Because I think this is going to be very, very important for the faculty members at AUS to really understand your work and also to know exactly how they can participate in this very, very important bootcamp.
Sure, thank you, Norita. Yeah, so I think just following on from what Mohammed was saying, I think that was the tipping point, I think, when we worked together during the bootcamp. So at that point, when we were receiving the proposals for the bootcamp, I read your proposal. You were planning to embed sustainability in the curriculum. And at that point, I was already working on a new version of the co-design framework that we were using previously in the Learning Design Bootcamp. So just to give you a background about the co-design framework to begin with, because the co-design ESD framework basically is a new version of the co-design embedding ESD. At the time when we were developing the Learning Design Bootcamp, we had that framework as a toolkit to help academics and educational developers to design, to embed learning and teaching in the curriculum using technology. So when we were planning the bootcamp where you participated, we had the pandemic hit and we had a lot of people already doing online learning. So a lot of people were already using different frameworks to design teaching and learning and embed blended learning or online learning. And because of the work I was doing with the UN, I started thinking, how can we really support academics in the development of ESD from a curriculum design point of view? And that's how, when I saw your proposal, and I thought, well, you know, I think this is a great team. I think if we could work together, we could put more meat into this idea. And I think that was it's been extremely productive, because you brought, I think you're an amazing team as well. It's not just about, you know, how professional you are and how knowledgeable you are. It's just also the synergy, I think, that we had from day one when we met and we started talking about this. It was brilliant. And I think that's that's my ethos anyway. I think what drives things is just the passion you put into things. You know, you don't need to know everything, but if you have the passion and you find the people that would help you to get there, I think that's the main difference. And I think that's what we can see now, that we then started working with Rose, and we then started looking for all the partners, and that now we have over 10 universities, you know, around the world supporting the project. So, but your question, Norita, is about the co-design's ESD toolkit specifically. So what UNESCO published in 2017, the key competencies for education for sustainable development, is a set of guidelines that specifies what needs to be done from an educational point of view to really enable students to act in a certain way to support the Sustainable Development Goals. What I saw when I read those guidelines is, you know, they're very clear, obviously, you know, the way they write is very clear, very concise, but how can we support academics really actually putting that into practice? I think that's what I found. I thought, well, they need more guidance. So how can they really easily see examples or put this into practice in real life without having to read, you know, 100 pages document? And that's how I started thinking about how we can marry learning design with ESD, because at the end of the day, you are basically redesigning the curriculum. And for that, you need really clear pedagogic foundation. And that's what the co-designs were bringing already. What we had to do is we had to really emphasize other areas that would drive the incorporation of education for sustainable development. So what the key competencies for education for sustainable development identified by UNESCO? Most of them, if you see some of the curriculums in other universities, they are very much related to employability skills. So we are talking about abilities to collaboration skills, collaboration competencies, problem solving, system thinking. I think the ones that are really key and that haven't been developed so much have been the future thinking and system thinking, because sometimes we are just thinking about our degree, our project, and we are not thinking about outside the box, how whatever I'm designing, whatever I'm producing, how that has an effect outside my country, outside my university, outside my world. And it's really developing those skills that are really, really important. So the co-design CSD is basically a toolkit that will enable academics, educational developers, students working in the team to really embed those competencies in the curriculum. And the key 3 pillars that co-design CSD is really emphasizing are obviously the competencies that already UNESCO identified that I mentioned: collaboration skills, system thinking, future thinking. Another key pillar is transformative pedagogies. Basically, what we are saying is, if you want to teach ESD, it's not just a matter of students being able to remember all the facts about poverty, figures, climate change, what's happening. That's important, but we also need to connect the students with their heart. They need to really feel that that's part of them, and whatever they do as an individual will have an effect in their world and the future generations. And those pillars are really key. Transformative pedagogies. We need to have another approach for teaching and learning. And that's one of the pillars that the co-design CSD framework is emphasizing. And that's something that I'm working with Catherine from a learning design point of view to embed those learning activity types that the OU works with. But that's just, maybe I can continue later, Norita. I don't want to take all the time.
Sure. Thank you so much, Maria. So maybe what we can do, we can transition to Catherine, because she has been working with you in the past few years in being a mentor as well. So maybe Catherine, can you just give a little bit overview of your role during the bootcamp and as a mentor as well?
Yeah, so I've been involved with 2 boot camps now. I came on board in 2020 as a mentor, and I was also a mentor in the latest boot camp this year. And I had a role in coordinating the group of mentors to provide some guidance and support and sort of answer questions, and for people to be able to check in as they went along. I mean, what I want to say about mentoring is that it's a real 2-way exchange of experience. And I kind of identify with what Mohammed said about learning, always learning. So I think part of what I found as a mentor for the boot camp is that I'm learning equally as much as I'm giving, in a way. And so the role of a mentor really is to walk alongside their team, to support them in their use of the toolkit, and to act as a critical friend. So it's a peer-to-peer relationship, working with the team, and just finding out where they've got to, where they are in their thinking, prompting them with some questions at intervals, just to sort of help them consider all the steps in design, and to make sure that they haven't jumped ahead, or that they're able to sort of evaluate the design that they're producing as they go along. And the toolkit, the Co-Design-S toolkit, and which is now becoming the ESD toolkit, that's a really useful means that the teams can use to evaluate their progress, and to see how things are changing for them. So they engage in reflection on both a personal and at a team level. So the team reflection is around how the process of being part of the bootcamp community is changing their practice, their perception of learning design, their roles, the dynamics within the team, and then at an individual level, how is the bootcamp input and process informing and changing people's own practice. So it's a very reflective process, and I think the more that people engage in that reflection, the more valuable it is, really. But certainly as a mentor, I found it a very rich and very valuable experience. And you know, we are part of a larger community of practice. So teams within their institutions are part of a community of practice, or they may find that forms and develops as they go through the bootcamp process. And then across different institutions, there's also the opportunity to become part of that larger community of practice. And that's really valuable for educators. You know, they can ask questions, they can share their challenges. You know, people learn from each other in quite an organic sort of way.
Thank you so much, Catherine. The one thing that both of you, I guess, did not mention is that this bootcamp is free. I guess that is a very important selling point here. I mean, it is not only beneficial, but it is free. I mean, one of the things that I guess I like the most about this bootcamp is that the fact that we have a mentor and we meet every week, we discuss about our strategies. And in addition to that, we have the opportunity to mingle and network with other educators all around the world. So that is something that is so valuable, I guess, for educators in order for us to get ideas. So I really value that. So thank you for your work as mentors, Catherine.
Yes.
So now I want to go to Mohammed, especially because most of our colleagues here right now are very interested to know exactly how to incorporate sustainability into their classes. So Mohammed, if you could just share some of your experience in the bootcamp in more detail, and then especially in terms of how you integrate a sustainability into your course.
Yeah, thank you. So as I said in the 301, we added 3 chapters about sustainability, about sustainable design also, and leadership. So that's one point. So when I started working with the team in the design, in the learning design bootcamp, really, as was said here, it provided me with a platform where I could start thinking and reflecting about really the institutional design of the educational content, and the fact that I had mentors like Maria and others. So we were all the time interacting and conversing with colleagues. The beauty of this bootcamp is that the diversity and exactly what we need. So this plurality of opinions, of insights. So we had some activities during the bootcamp. We had 5 reflections, and we have some lectures. But the reflections, for me, let me briefly speak about the reflections. We had in the bootcamp 5 reflections. During these reflections, we should have, let's say, analyzed, examine, investigate, make comparison, contrast about what we are doing and what other colleagues are doing, and this self-reflection. It was very useful because I started really thinking, oh, this is good. Oh, this is not good. I can delete this one. I can add this one. So I started a kind of inter-creativity, not just interaction, but it was like kind of inter-creativity with my content and myself. And think this is a turning moment in my awareness of what I am doing. So I start thinking, oh, I'm doing this. Okay, now let's think one step. I would like to take now the perspective of my students.
Yeah.
How my students are going to interact with the content I am providing them. And all the time, because the 301 it's heavy in projects. There are no exams, no final exams. There are just projects. And then one thing is that so we had 2 team projects and 1 individual project. So all the projects, they should include sustainability dimensions or component of it, because as we all know, the United Arab Emirates in 2017, in their agenda for 2030, their objective or their goal, long-term goal, is to include sustainability in all teaching curricula. So that was their, and I think we are in the right direction. I think we're, at least at the American University, I have the feeling that we are adopting sustainability components in all the projects. This means when I am as instructor, when I design my in-class activities or my projects, I should pay attention that the sustainability principles or culture, if I want to say culture, or components are embedded in all activities, which means at the end of the semester, the learning outcomes. So because we have, it's time, should I stop talking or can I elaborate?
Yes, please, continue.
So in our 6 learning outcomes, we should all, we took them from Stanford University, but we added our institutional format because at the American University, we have our format. So we tried all the time to take into account the sustainability and to measure to what extent our students really, they become aware of the importance of the environmental and sustainable educational content. So I repeat, so all the in-class activities, all projects, as an instructor, I need to do 2 things. I need to add the components, sustainability and environment components, but at the same time, and that's really what I have learned from the bootcamp, is to think as a student when I am designing and when I'm designing my content, my activities, and all the things. I think I should stop here. Maybe we can elaborate later on. Thank you, Norita. Yes.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Mohammed. That is very, very important. I mean, the point that you made. And that is one of the few things that we learn as well from the bootcamp. We definitely want to design our course based on our own perspective as educators, because we kind of know exactly what we want to cover. But at the same time, equally important is to understand the students' need. And most of the time we forget about that. So yeah, I guess we have to be reminded about that. So this kind of session that we have is very important so that we can keep reminding ourselves that we are doing whatever it is that we are doing for the sake of the student. So we have to think about them. So thank you so much, Mohammed, for bringing that in. If I may just continue to ask you a follow-up question, Mohammed, if you don't mind. So how exactly do you tailor the project, the materials that you cover in your class for sustainability to the local context? Because most of the materials are all in the global context.
Yeah, very good. So as I told at the beginning, I have a passion for learning. So before teaching the course, I took some certificates by some of the leading scholars on sustainable strategies, Jessica Henriksen at Harvard University. So I also started learning her book. So the point is that how can I bring this global content and contextualize it in the United Arab Emirates? So as I said, we have 2 team projects. The first team projects is I was asking the students to work at a local organization. And I told the students, because during the COVID-19, we had not easy access to interviews. And so I told them to work to identify a problem on campus. And then I would like to mention here the key and crucial role played by Rose, the head of sustainability. Yep. She was all the time, actually, I invited her to talk to my students, and my students, they were all the time working with us. So almost the projects, for the first project, they were about the environmental sustainable issues on our campus, because that's very important. I think Maria mentioned one of the things, which is the way of being. The way of being, we have 2 way of thinking: the self-awareness and self-awareness thinking and normative thinking. And I think what I try to do all the time to create a kind of desire so that my students should be fully aware as a global and local citizens. So the localization. So they think global, but they act local. And then all the projects were about, the American University or University City or Sharjah, because we need to create a positive impact. So that's one of the things I did. All the projects, they should address one local, very local, which is American University of Sharjah. I think that's more than enough.
Great. Thank you so much, Mohammed. So now, I just want to transition to Catherine because we heard from Muhammad's perspective as the instructor. But now for you, I mean, coming from you as the learning designer, Catherine, what are some of the, if you can share some of the experience facilitating and also helping faculty members in designing their courses, especially, you know, when you need to incorporate something new, such as sustainability. So can you talk a little bit about your role there at OU in terms of facilitating faculty members?
Yes, so quite a big part of my job is working with module or qualification teams who are developing new curriculum. And I think this has transitioned quite well in our discussion, talking about the student perspective, because that's exactly what learning designers are trying to put first and foremost, the focus is on the learner, their experience, and what they will do to learn. So our OU learning design tools and approaches are basically a practical, structured and collaborative approach to enable teams to do that, to put the student at the centre of their learning. It's evidence-based, so we draw on data and learning analytics to form a picture of learner characteristics, learner engagement, outcomes. So when a new course is being designed, we will draw up student profiles. We'll look at who the learners are, perhaps who the learners are on current related courses, and who the team would like to attract to the course. What are their aspirations? You know, we try a lot to widen participation and make sure that courses are truly inclusive. So we use a number of tools and approaches. Student profiles or personas are one, and as part of the bootcamp this year, I ran a session on planning the student journey. So thinking about how it is from the student point of view at each stage of their learning, going through a module, what they might be thinking and feeling and experiencing. And another tool that we use to help teams identify ways of actively engaging students with the learning materials is an activity types framework. So this is focused on different things that students may do to learn. So as well as taking in the material, reading, watching, listening, it may be doing their own research, it may be having a discussion, communicating, it may be applying the learning into a real world or simulated setting, perhaps using case studies, something like that. There are, and it will involve producing something, creating some kind of text or artifact, some sort of demonstration of learning. And the framework that we have is a way of encouraging our educators to think from the student point of view about what the learners will do. Because if somebody is very expert in their field, you know, there may be many important concepts and so on that they wish to get across, but it's always coming back to, well, what will the student do? That's one of the key questions. And just to say that I can share a link to our blog, because some of the tools and resources that we use are freely available from the resources section of our blog. Yeah, and then just quickly, another core principle is constructive alignment, so that the assessment tasks provide a clear opportunity for students to demonstrate that they've achieved the intended learning outcomes. The learning outcomes are used to define the learning activities, and those learning activities incorporate assessment tasks. So it's about clearly aligned learning and a clear, smooth journey for the learner. That helps them to succeed, really. So I can talk a bit more about some of the activities that we engage in, but that might be enough for now.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Catherine. So basically, you work very, very closely with faculty members at OU, right?
Yes.
Out of curiosity, how many learner designers do you guys have at the university?
Oh gosh, well, we have a central team of, I think it's about 16 or 18 people now. It has been growing over the last year or so. The demand for learning designers, I think with it, everybody being very heavily engaged in developing online learning, the demand has grown. So it's quite a large team, and we will work with the faculty module teams in the first 6 months or so when they're designing and planning what they're going to do.
Wow, great. So we obviously need to expand our team members as well. Thank you, Catherine. Now I just want to go to Maria. So we've been talking about from the instructor's perspective, from the learner designer's perspective. So now from you as educators and also as champions that promote better education for basically students all around the world. So Maria, I want to know, what do you think exactly that we should focus on in terms of providing education for sustainable development?
Thank you, Norita. Yes, as I said before, obviously we have like a clear curriculum that we need to embed, the key competencies. But the other pillar that we always need to keep in mind is the use of the 3 domains that are encouraged to be embedded. And the 3 domains are what we call the hand, the head, and the heart. So we are talking about the cognitive domain, the head, the socio-emotional domain, that's how you connect your heart, your beliefs, how you connect with your passions, with your attitudes, and your hand. So how do you put into practice those competencies in the real world, or, as Mohammed was saying, locally, you need to take action. You need to make sure that it's not just in your head. It's not that you feel it and you feel happy or angry about it, but you need to do something about it. And that's the hand. And that's the role of the academic. You need to take the students and put those 3 things together. You need to bring the curriculum, contextualize the curriculum, bring those competencies that we are talking about, system thinking, collaborative competencies, problem solving, etc., future thinking. Contextualize that within your area. So if you are teaching architecture, that may involve, how you're designing the building, using more environmental friendly elements, probably raw material, how are you designing the structure, etc. But then they need to be aware of why they are doing that. So that's the brain that has to be the cognitive domain that has to be put into it. You then need to connect the heart, what they think about it, what do they believe. It's not just learning, and it's not just remembering that because they have to remember that. Do they really believe that that's the way it should be? And what are they doing about it? How are they going to show you as an academic that they actually have their heart into it and they know the facts about all these problems that we are facing? So I think that's the challenge for us as academics, that to begin with, we have to connect the 3 domains.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
If we don't connect them, if we don't connect our hearts to our brain and our hands, we won't be able to teach it. So if you need to probably reinforce your heart in relation to ESD, think again and probably engage more with the community. I would advise you to, it's something we are going to use during the bootcamp. It's Global Citizen, it's called. It's a foundation, it's amazing. You can take action on different areas, poverty, equality, gender equality, education, anything that is close to your heart. I would encourage you to go and have a look on the website. It's Global Citizen, it's called. And if you're teaching and you want to, and I think we all have to, we don't have a choice, we have to embed education for sustainable development in our curriculums. I think before you start designing your curriculum, revisit your heart, your brain, and your hands. And I'm sure you're going to be very successful.
Great, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you bring that up, because we have been having some discussion earlier, trying to change the students' mindset is one thing, but changing our mindset first is the most important thing, I guess. So that is why we are having this panel discussion, to make sure that our faculty members are also ready to incorporate the concept of sustainability itself in the classroom. Otherwise, we can always talk about what we can do for the student, but if we as educators do not believe in this, there's nothing that we can do. So I'm very, very glad that you mentioned that, Mariam. I have a few more questions, follow-up questions for all the three of you, but I'm looking at the time now. I want to make sure that we have enough time to answer questions from the attendees here. Do we have any specific questions, Rose, from the chat?
We've been answering them a little bit as we've gone. Maria has been very good at being able to put in information about the bootcamp so that it is available. So she saved that link. Mohammed, one of the professors, was asking, is your class open to faculty? So it sounds like you have some interest in faculty that are interested in coming to the EIN 301 class.
I don't know, but I am happy. I would be more than happy to share my skills. Yeah.
Fantastic. Otherwise, the other
one thing, I mean, I'm happy to share them in an formal and in an informal context. So at any time, I'm available at any time, please.
Mohammed is always open. Yes. Thank you, Mohammed.
So a question just came in for Catherine. Do you use a specific list of learning design standards at Open University? I know about the Quality Matters course design rubric. Do you recommend a specific one?
Right, learning design standards. Gosh, I guess we have our own approach that we're always sort of evaluating and refining. So the learning design standards. Yeah, the OU learning design approach is based on research. It started in about 2007, the OU Learning Design Initiative, and it's grown from there really. So there was a lot of research and quite a large scale project that sort of preceded what we do now really, and it's been part of business as usual since 2014. So I'm not sure whether I'm really answering the question, but I'm happy to just kind of be in contact with the questioner afterwards if perhaps I haven't answered it fully. I mean, there are standards or guidance such as Universal Design for Learning, which is about inclusivity and ensuring that designs are as accessible as possible to learners. So that's one that comes up in work that we're doing on accessibility and equality and diversity and inclusion. So I think we look at the standards and frameworks, and then perhaps, as Mohammed said, we contextualize to our own OU setting, which is all around distance learning. But yeah, please do be in contact with me afterwards if you want to sort of talk about it more.
Great, thank you. So that's all the questions that we have in the chat as of now.
Okay, great. So I can just continue with the next question that I have here. So basically this question is for Maria. So Maria, I just want to kind of touch a little bit in terms of how ESD basically evolved during COVID-19, because we know exactly the impact of COVID-19 on education. So how exactly can we ensure that ESD is used to help making sure that nobody is basically left behind?
Sure. Thank you, Norita. Yeah, so I think as we were talking earlier, I think the pandemic was a massive training experience for all of us in relation to ESD, because globally we all were affected one way or another. And even we were living in the first world or the third world, we were affected by that. And we could realize that wherever you were part of a community. And to fight the pandemic, we had to think strategically, globally. We couldn't just think about, this is just in the UK where I live, and this is how we are doing the vaccine strategy. But we are flying everywhere. People are coming in. So how are we handling that? We could see how inequalities inequalities became really apparent to all of us. We could see how, I was telling you before that, even though I live in the UK, and we were one of the first countries to roll out the vaccine program, my family in Venezuela, I have elderly relatives there, and I could have sent millions of pounds to Venezuela, but I wasn't able to find a vaccine for them. So that shows you that we have to think about the global impact of all of these things, and how we can be affected wherever we are, whatever position we have, and I think that has been a massive training experience for all of us. And I think that could be it's a real example that we've all lived. And I think as an academic, it's something that you can bring forward in your teaching as an example to showcase. All of the SDGs can be easily highlighted, throughout the pandemic. When we're talking about, education, as we know, we went to online learning because we couldn't really go and get together in the classroom. We know that health issues were obviously completely put on the spot because we couldn't really cope globally with health issues, and so on and so forth. So I think we need to take this opportunity, although it's been very painful for all of us globally. I think we can take this as an example to take ESD more on the board, and hopefully that will help us push ESD forward within the curriculum design.
Yeah, that's definitely very true, because the pandemic kind of, I guess, make everybody realize that there is inequality in every aspect of our life. When it comes to education, definitely, even the developed countries such as the US, they still have students or people who have no access to the computer, to the internet, who can't go to school. So that is in the States. Imagine the people in the third world country. So
absolutely,
people realize.
Yeah, I mean, that's when I started working with UNICEF in Uzbekistan, for example. When the pandemic hit, they couldn't access. We had people in very isolated areas, and they had no access, not even TV access, because the government introduced broadcasted lectures through TV, national TV. And the idea was to really do a situational analysis to see how we could reach those communities that were completely isolated. So at the end, we had to create a capacity building program for teachers and then roll it out, basically relying on mobile delivery. And that was the only way we could reach parents, and we could reach students that were completely isolated. So it's, but that required a lot of work and time. And so it definitely highlights all the inequalities.
Definitely. Yeah. I'm like I said, I'm just hoping that, we as educators, we have almost all the resources. Maybe there's a lot more that we can do to help making sure that nobody is left behind. So that is why I feel so grateful that, we kind of met, and then we took this boot camp. So that's why I really want to share, I guess, the luxury of having access to information, to education with everyone here, in hope that we can do the same for the rest of the world. So yeah, that is why I'm so grateful for your initiative for the boot camp, Maria.
Well, I'm really grateful to you, because you've been a massive motivation for me to really move forward with this. And I think that's the idea, that we are starting small. So as you said, Norita, for you attending the webinar, the bootcamp is completely free. And this is, we are looking for a team of an academic, wherever you are in the world. We are looking at higher education, so mainly higher education institutions. The framework could be applied to any sector, but in this case, the bootcamp is targeting higher education. So we are looking for an academic teaching a subject, working with an educational developer or learning designer or educational technologist, someone that will help you develop that content. And we are looking for a student associated with that module or that program. That's all we need. And we want you to bring your heart, your brain, and your hands. So ready to take action. And it's completely free. It's going to be 3 months starting in March until June next year. The call will be, we open the call on the 4th of October. So you can download the call. It's a document with all the information you need, and you can apply as a team. And we are hoping that this idea can be also, taken by the universities, taking the bootcamp. We hope that we can expand the bootcamp in the follow-up years. It could be that we have more people around, but I have to say, we all work on this project voluntarily. We don't receive any money to do this. And I think that's the power we have, that we have our hearts into this, and we are driving this with the passion that we feel about saving the world for our children and for future generations.
Great, thank you so much, Maria. That is so inspiring. Yeah,
thank you.
I'm really hoping that we're going to have a couple of teams from AUS who are interested to join for next year's program. Mohammed and Catherine, do you have any last remark that you want to make before we close the session?
Yes, I would like to go. And briefly, I would like to. So I think that there are 2 points. So there is the technology and the pandemic-19 and the disruption of many industries, and including universities, higher education. I think I briefly will say we need to think about 2 things: the hardware and the software. So for me, the hardware, we need to start thinking about less university, more pluriversity. So the pluriversity, where it's where we can co-teach and where the multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary will be happening. So that's one. So less university, more pluriversity. That's one. And the second thing, there is a skills gap worldwide. And I think when Maria started talking, so Maria was talking about the skills, the competencies. For me, these are the software. And we need all this thinking: design thinking, system thinking, future thinking, circular thinking, because it's about the sustainability. We need to think in circular, agile thinking, adaptability. Yesterday, one of our colleagues was talking about the adaptability thinking. So we need also to start to focus on the skills and less slides-based knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed. Catherine?
Yep, I agree with Mohammed. It's all about enabling students to develop as critical thinkers and future thinkers as much as teaching the course content. And it's also about embedding it across the curriculum, across disciplines, and making it explicit to students. So we did a short piece of research with our student panel. We're very passionate about bringing student voice into our designs. And we asked some of our students what they thought about sustainability in the curriculum. And some didn't spot it there at all. Some thought it shouldn't be there. But others believed that it should, it was so important. It should be included in all modules and not cast aside because it's not relevant to their area of study. So I think bringing our students on board as we go is really important, and making it explicit in the curriculum and offering those opportunities for students to reflect on their own lives and context and their own skills and capabilities and competencies.
Great, thank you so much, Catherine.
No, Rita, there is a one quick last question that's an interesting question that I think you guys may be able to answer before we wrap up here. Should accreditation institutions embed ESDs in their standards to enable educational institutions to be more committed and inspired to have them in their curriculum? So should those accreditation, those higher organizations be embedding this in their standards?
Who wants to take that question?
I think at least I will briefly say, in the United Arab Emirates in 2019 stipulation for academic accreditation, a commission for academic accreditation, I think one of the accreditation criteria is to embed and add some sustainable components in the curricula.
Yep, definitely. I guess Sonia also said that yesterday about how the government here is very, very prone into making sure that sustainability is going to be one of the modules that we have to cover in our curriculum. Yeah, thank you. Any feedback from you, Catherine and Maria?
Yes, definitely. I think that's, as an example, the Royal College of Architects in the UK, they are, it's compulsory for the architect curriculum to embed sustainability competencies. And I think that's going to become something that, you know, it will go through other disciplines, I'm hoping. But I think it's definitely needed. And I think it shows that we need to really make sure that it's part of policy making, you know, capacity building for everyone, really.
All right. Catherine, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think that's right. Just to say that all curriculum should equip students to contribute to a more sustainable future. And we have to work towards that. And those accreditation institutions and quality standards will be important.
Great, thank you so much. This has been a very valuable and insightful discussion that we have. I wish that we have much longer time so that we can continue the conversation. So now, thank you again, Maria, thank you again, Catherine, and also thank you again, Mohammed. So if any of you guys have any other feedback that you want to be addressed by our panelists, feel free to just submit your question to us and we will try our best to answer them. So now I want to pass the floor to Rose for our next session.
Great. Thank you so much, Narita. Great panel. Thank you to all of the panelists for that inspiring talk. So our next section is with Alex Malouf, who is here and is going to talk to us from the industry perspective. I'll introduce Alex. Alex is a marketing communication executive who has spent the last 18 years in the Middle East. Alex has lived across the region. He has lived in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, and the United Arab Emirates. He is the corporate communications director for the Middle East and Africa at Schneider Electric. He is a journalist by trade and with a cultural mix that is both European and Arabic. Alex's experience spans communications and media, public relations, marketing, and both multinationals in the energy, technology, and FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods space, as well as several Gulf-based government institutions. I think one of the other things that makes Alex such a great speaker is he is really involved in and is passionate about sustainability and does a lot of work with a lot of boards and a lot of committees and trying to promote skills-based sustainability work and really working towards introducing sustainability at a number of different levels within other organizations. So with that, I would like to welcome Alex to the webinar, and you are welcome to start sharing your screen. And as you're doing that, I did want to touch on one question that we had yesterday that I think might be an interesting jumping off point. One of the questions that we didn't get a chance to answer yesterday was how do you advise me to be sustainable, especially when I've lived my life otherwise? And how do I convince students to be sustainable? So I think that this is really a powerful question and something that we feel that in reflection before the meeting, we were talking about the fact that that this is a challenge for many of the faculty here on campus. And I just wanted to start that conversation off and talk about how we've really learned that humans are adaptable. If COVID-19 has taught us anything, it's that we're all very adaptable and we can make changes quickly. Some of them we embrace faster than others, but I think it's important to think about that no one wakes up sustainable, 100% sustainable, that it is a journey for all of us. And I think it's important to think about the Sustainable Development Goals were developed in 2015. They didn't really hit the market until 2016. And I didn't really become super familiar with them until well into 2017. So these are really new ideas. And this is not something that has been around for generations that we learned when we were in school. So I think it's important to realize that that the change is incremental and that we're going to make it steadily, but that it's not something that there's no one out there that is 100% sustainable and is walking the talk 100%. So we've got to all make those adaptations. And I bet if for faculty, if you reach out to your students and ask them about sustainability, they'll have a lot of passion and a lot of ideas. And so I think that we can go from there. But from Alex, from your perspective, let's hear what you have to say about sustainability and accelerating it in industry and beyond, and what's important for our graduates to be thinking about as they're leaving AUS.
Well, thank you very much for the intro, Rose. One thing which fills me with a lot of optimism and confidence is the fact that our youth are impassioned about sustainability. They want to live more sustainably, and they see what's coming. For older generations, we've got, let's be honest, we've got less time on this planet. Youth are going to be around for much longer, and these issues are going to be hitting them head on. I hope you can all see my screen. I hope it's nice and clear.
Yes, it is.
Good. Well, I'm going to make my presentation interesting. I've got a couple of videos. I want to spark a couple of ideas in terms of what sustainability is all about, because the word itself is such a big field, and it's so widely understood in many different ways. So let's just jump in to the ideas, right? So first of all, the obvious point. We've had this huge shock over the past 2 years, but it doesn't take away from the bigger mission at hand when it comes to sustainability. We had Paris, the COP summit. I always forget which number it was. Maybe it's COP 18. It probably actually was a little bit later because we're now on COP 26. But many people in the world realize that we've got to do much more when it comes to changing how we live. And this was really pushed home over the summer because of a number of instances in terms of climate issues, but also recently this month, the IPCC report in terms of climate change. And I'm just going to push home this. You should be able to hear the sound, but this is what we're facing now.
So we've known for decades that the world is warming, but this report tells us that recent changes in the climate are widespread, rapid, and intensifying, unprecedented in thousands of years. For example, this report tells us that each of the past 4 decades has been the warmest on record since pre-industrial times. Further, it is indisputable that human activities are causing climate change. Human influence is making extreme climate events, including heat waves, heavy rainfall, and droughts, more frequent and severe. What's new in this report is that we can now attribute many more changes at the global and regional level to human influence. But the bottom line is that unless there are immediate, rapid, and large-scale reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, limiting warming to 1.5 degrees C, or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, will be beyond reach. The report shows that in the next 20 years, global average temperature is expected to reach or exceed 1.5 degrees C above pre-industrial levels.
Sea level change through the middle of the century, around 2050, has largely been locked in. Regardless of how quickly we get our emissions down, we're likely looking at about 15 to 30 centimeters, or about 6 to 12 inches, of global average sea level rise through the middle of the century. On average, this would increase the likelihood of what used to be considered a once-in-a-century high water level more than tenfold.
So, to put it simply, climate change and sustainability is going to affect everything around us, and it's going to affect governments, it's going to affect businesses, it's going to affect every single person on this planet. There is nowhere to hide, there is nowhere to escape to. And you know, the video, for me, that video is really shocking because it spells out the crisis that we are facing, and it also should make many much more aware in terms of the work that we have to do, and that includes us as businesses, because we have a major role to play in terms of making ourselves more sustainable, making our supply chains more sustainable, and also as well helping the wider society, individuals, families, whoever it may be, groups, to become more sustainable. We all know the SDGs, and the SDGs are fantastic. There actually were, before the SDGs, there were the Millennial Development Goals, which I remember very much from the UK because, you know, there was a big focus on poverty. But the SDGs are our guide, so to speak, in terms of our compass. They should be the place which, or they should be the goals to which we aspire to. And as a company, I'm going to list a couple of things that we are looking at, and I'll dive in more to that right at the end, because I want to also look at the skills that we are thinking about in terms of making these transitions to become more sustainable. But a couple of really simple concepts that every single organization needs to think about. One is obviously climate. Climate affects us all. It impacts how we live, but also as well, it impacts resources. Think about, for example, where we are right now. We are in an arid part of the world. We get our water through desalination. Look at our neighbor, Iran. Over the summer, there have been severe droughts in Iran, which leads to instability and many other issues as well. So climate is a huge one for us to think about. We've also got to think about increasingly about shareholders, because shareholders, people with the money, are asking, what are you doing in terms of sustainability? For me, this is going to be the biggest issue that we face, both in terms of reputation, but also in terms of the money issue over the next 3 to 4 decades. And we are going to be asked increasingly about ESG, so environmental, social, and governance issues. What are you doing on those 3 elements as a company? And what you'll see increasingly many firms doing is actually reporting on ESGs on a quarterly basis, just like they do on financial results. And that's what we do. We actually report on our ESG performance every single quarter, because we want to show where we're heading to and the action we're taking. Obviously, ecosystem. What are we doing in terms of our supply chains? What are we doing in terms of our customers to help out? You know, we've got to be seen to be responsible and helping, supporting those who want to make a change and don't know where to begin. Increasingly, you know, if you look at Europe, you look at US, look at Asia, we talk about a green recovery. We don't have that yet here, and it's actually something which we are pushing for. We need to see an official government strategy across the region in terms of a green recovery. But in the meantime, we can help in terms of our supply chains and our customers as individual companies. And then, you know, the element which we don't often think about, but the social element of sustainability. What are we seeing in terms of issues such as gender equality? We see these issues being talked about much more in the West, but again, you know, we are going to be asked about it by shareholders. We're going to be asked about it by NGOs, by single interest groups. So we've got to address these issues as much as possible. I work at a global company, but even national, regional companies are going to be asked. They are going to be prodded, so to speak, and it is an issue which is going to increasingly come up. So, you know, for me, you guys really are the ones who are going to lead the change. I'm sure you all know a Swedish teenager, but really it's, you know, it's a youth who are pushing incredibly hard, probably the hardest of any generational group in terms of wanting to be more sustainable. Let's look at a couple of elements. Rose asked me to talk about the skill sets that we need to think about when it comes to trying to embed sustainability into businesses and organizations. And for us, there are four basic elements. There's the issue of D&I. So being more diverse, being also more inclusive as an organization. So bringing disparate groups. And I think the best way of putting this is you need to be as well reflected, or you need to reflect the wider society internally, because only then are you able to understand all the issues that society is facing. Obviously, business focus, how we're trying to adapt as businesses in the short term, and then going into systems thinking and then future thinking. Ultimately, that the idea about having a circular economy and circular design, so that really nothing is wasted, and that's what we should all be aiming at. So let's jump in with a simple one. And again, I'm trying to make this as fun, as direct as possible, but diversity and inclusion really, really does matter. We've got to reflect society. We've got to bring in more groups. You all know about the issue of, for example, women, bringing more women into industries where there isn't enough representation. I work for an engineering and tech company. There aren't enough women in engineering and tech. There are a lot of women studying engineering and tech, but it's how do we bring them into the industry? How do we retain them as well? But there's also other elements as well. That there's having diversity in terms of culture, in terms of experiences, in terms of generations as well. Think about it. We're a very young region, but we also have people who have experience, who have seen how life has been. How do we try and benefit from all of these different groups? And how do we bring this into how we think and how we create products, how we respond, and basically how do we behave better? I've got video examples for each of these subjects. So let me play you the first one. The diversity issue is really easy to see. It's actually from one of my old companies, but it's a great way really of showing how you can do diversity well, because when you do it well, you also, this is a great point to make, you actually increase your business potential as well.
Nana, ये देखो, shield, leg, helmet. Homework हो गया? मम्मी, ये देखो.
फिर दाग लगा दिया. पापा, ये लीजिए आपके घर जाने की टिकट. Hello, yeah, I'm just going to send you the email in 5 minutes. Yeah, give me 5 minutes. I'm working on the present.
मेरी छोटी सी गुड़िया कितनी बड़ी हो गई. घर घर खेलती थी, अब घर संभालती है, ऑफिस संभालती है. आई एम सो प्राउड एंड आई एम सो सॉरी. सॉरी कि ये सब तुम्हें अकेले करना पड़ता है. सॉरी कि जब तुम घर घर खेलती थी तो मैंने तुम्हें रोका नहीं. ये नहीं कहा कि ये सिर्फ तुम्हारा काम नहीं है, तुम्हारे हस्बैंड का भी है. पर कहता भी कैसे है.
और मेरी ग्रीन शर्ट धो देना.
मैंने भी तो कभी तुम्हारी मम्मी की हेल्प नहीं की, और तुमने जो देखा वही सीखा. तुम्हारे हस्बैंड ने भी बचपन में यही देखा होगा. घर घर खेलते वक्त वो टीवी देखने की या न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ने की एक्टिंग करता होगा, और तुम जैसी कोई छोटी सी लड़की चाय बनाने की एक्टिंग करती होगी. उसके डैड की तरफ से सॉरी, तुम्हारे डैड की तरफ से सॉरी, और हर उस डैड की तरफ से सॉरी जिसने कई कई सालों से एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया है. पर अभी भी देर नहीं हुई. इस सॉरी के साथ मैं अपनी तरफ से एक छोटी सी कोशिश करूंगा कि घर के काम में मम्मी की हेल्प करूं. किचन का किंग ना बन पाऊं तो कम से कम लॉन्ड्री में तो हाथ बटाऊं. इतने साल एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया है, अब कुछ सही कर जाऊं. तुम्हारा पापा.
Every time I watch this video, I always get chills. But it's that whole idea of of being a company which is responsive, which is empathetic, and which is increasingly taking a stance on societal issues to promote progressive development. We're seeing this a lot in the US and Europe, and we're also slowly seeing it here as well. Even though traditionally governments have led on societal issues, businesses are also now stepping in. So that's one. The second thing is that shift to sustainability through technology. And this is a fascinating one. So I can talk from our own example. My company is an engineering technology company. We essentially state that 70% of our product portfolio is green in the sense that it helps our customers reduce their resource load. It makes them more efficient. It could be in terms of energy, it could be in terms of water, and you will see this in terms of how organizations operate. Technology in many ways is going to be the path which we need to take to become more sustainable. It wasn't traditionally thought of like this before, but we are going to see technology and sustainability being essentially two sides of the same coin. So having, I think, an understanding of both is going to increasingly help us as organizations become greener, become more efficient, and understand as well what we can do. And if you think about the technologies which are coming to the fore, such as artificial intelligence, such as big data, which we use, they're going to help us essentially understand all the data which is being generated. And then they're going to give us analytics and insights into how we can become more efficient. And the pandemic has obviously accelerated this progress. We're seeing much more digital transformation and companies coming to us and saying, we want to cut our energy usage by 20, 30%. We want to do X, Y, Z. We want to try and adapt this in terms of our buildings, our factories. And it really is all about how we use technology, because we also need to ensure that we have development, and technology is going to be there to provide development. Another simple way of looking at this is thinking about access to energy. There are over 1 billion people who do not have access to safe, reliable energy, many of them in sub-Saharan Africa. So we are going to see technologies like solar, microgrids being pushed out there and being used in a way which gives people access to life-changing electricity, but at the same time does it in a way which will not harmfully impact the environment, which will increase the number of CO2 emissions. So that's something which we've really got to bear in mind, the symbiosis between technology and sustainability. The third point is this push from a linear concept to circular. And what is interesting here is many of us have experienced this. We've all used a service like Uber, for example, this idea that you actually don't own the asset, you basically rent it. And again, digital comes in here. Technology enables us to do this, to basically go out to rent assets. Another great example is Netflix. We used to go out. I remember when I was younger, going out, buying VHS tapes, buying CDs. Today, we don't need to. So thinking about how we can use technology essentially to make it easier to get access to resources or to services without actually using more resources, actually shrinking the amount of resources being needed. And let me give you an example here. This is a great story from the region, from a company you will all know. And also as well, it plays into diversity and inclusion, but this idea of using technology essentially to give people access to new ideas, new solutions, and also democratizing it as well. I'll play the example because you'll be able to see it much better than I can describe it.
Although I have cerebral palsy, I do everything I can to conduct myself like everyone else. But in my own home, I'm surrounded with furniture crying out, "Cripple." I'd like to sit on a regular sofa without being afraid I won't be able to get up.
IKEA's vision is to create a better everyday life for the many. This enables give simple and affordable home furnishings for 10% of the population.
Every child, every person is different depending on their needs.
Disability drives innovation. Even in some of our public libraries, there's 3D printers.
A lot of the solutions, they've been very medicalized down through the years, and nothing as cool as anything you've produced.
ועכשיו אנחנו רוצים להראות לכם יוזמה מיוחדת של רשת איקאה שנקראת Disabled.
יוזמה חשובה שתקל על אנשים עם מוגבלויות איקאה, עם ארגון נגישות.
So that's one great campaign. Now let's look to where we really need to end up being. It's all essentially about the circular economy. It's about repurposing. It's about reusing. It's essentially about wasting nothing. That's where we need to aim towards. And if you look at ideas like 3D printing, that's a step in that direction. The reason why we need to get there quickly is because the amount of waste we have right now is simply unsustainable. You probably will know about Earth Overshoot Day, which basically states when we're going to run out of resources based on each country's inputs. But then there's also the issue in terms of shifting economies, and this is where the opportunity is for businesses. If you look, for example, at us. We have today 70% of our products being green. We want to increase that to 80% by 2025. There is a business opportunity in the circular economy. And if you don't believe me, you can even look at companies like Patagonia and Unilever, who are really showing the way. And what we need to do in this region is catch up. I'm going to show you one last video from case studies, and it really sums up the challenge we have at hand, and also the creativity we need to think about in terms of getting people to think about these issues.
In the Pacific Ocean, there is so much plastic, an area the size of France has formed. Governments have simply ignored it. So we found a way to ensure they couldn't, by turning the country-sized trash patch into an official country.
Les trash isles.
Ou trash isles.
À la isla de plástico.
Des îles poubelles, comme
the trash isles.
Introducing the Trash Isles. On World Oceans Day, the Plastic Oceans Foundation and LADBible submitted an application to the United Nations to recognise the Trash Isles as an official country, because under the laws of the UN, other countries are then obliged to clean it up.
Declared the part of the ocean where all the trash is gathered, the plastic, the Trash Isles. Has the petition been received, and what's your take on it?
I think it's a very innovative and creative way to bring attention to a problem that is often not seen.
Having met the criteria to become a country, the Trash Isles began recruiting citizens online. In the first few weeks, we had more citizens than some countries. The Trash Isles had everything an official country needs: a currency called debris, a passport for new citizens, and a national flag. We even had big-name celebrities signing up.
I think this is the first honorary citizenship I've had from any emerging nation.
Thank you very much.
Trash Isles citizenship.
Trash Isles. Trash Isles.
Some even took on official roles.
I'm Judi Dench, the Trash Isles Queen.
I will be the best secretary of your defense that I can.
With over 200,000 citizens, 50 million video views, and 500 million people reached, the Trash Isles put the plastic problem firmly on the map.
I will make reference to the Trash Isles from here on out.
So, it's a funny example, but it's It's also a statement in terms of how much work we have to do. Now, let me see. I did want to show you something, but unfortunately it's not here. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to go out for a second. There you go, because it's hidden. So let me just unhide it and then show it back. So I'm just going to bring everything up because obviously, there you go. So I want to give you a sense as to how sustainability impacts everything that we do. It impacts our employees. It's something that drives our positioning with our employees. It's something that they want us to tackle, not only just in terms of societal or design of the company, but also as well what the company does for others. That's one. And then there's the wider societal issue. What are we doing to make things better rather than worse? There's also the impact on the planet. We want to operate in a healthy environment, healthy world. The more polluted the world is, the less resources we have, the more expensive it is for us to operate as a company. And then there's the issue in terms of our operations. How are we seen to be a responsible organization and making sure that our green footprint or our ecological footprint in terms of resources is as small as possible? There's an additional input in terms of what consumers are asking for. There is a push for greener products, but also as well, there is going to be the issue of taxation on waste. You may have heard about carbon taxes, which Europe and the US have passed recently. That's going to come into enforcement pretty soon, and that will essentially put companies in less green countries at a disadvantage. If you are paying for electricity which is not green and which is subsidized, you will find taxation coming on top of you. So we've really got to tackle this as holistically as possible. So it does touch on every single thing that we do as an operation. One final thought in terms of how we look at it, the best companies have got to be very smart in terms of their goals. And if you look, these are our commitments up until 2025, and they touch on pretty much every single part of our business. They touch on everything that we do as employees. If you look in terms of sales, if you look in terms of suppliers, if you look in terms of how our employees are shaped and what they're doing, and then you also look at how we are supporting society. Every single job role in our company has some piece of sustainability action which needs to be taken. So I'm going to play one last video because it really is for me all about youth. This is what I'm going to end it on, and then I'm going to pass back to Rose.
I believe we should look for a call to action, and once we see the action, hope will inevitably come.
My life, or our lives as human beings, are 100% dependent on nature.
It's crazy how much it affects us, but how much people don't recognize it and realize what it actually is. Human beings are the biggest causes of climate change. But the good thing is there's a solution, and we are part of the solution. There are a number of solutions to climate change, and we don't need to research them. They're already there. A lot of people just think we need to plant trees, but it just doesn't end there. We need to focus on change of mindset, change of mentality. If we are to start, if we are to mitigate the effects of climate change, if we are to end global warming, then we must start young. We must focus on adding curricula that is going to benefit them and the environment.
If we work together as a common family, just one family, in combating and fighting against this climate change and putting in measures, then we're likely to protect our future.
Governments need to definitely increase trial allocations towards areas, sectors, ideas, ideals that are meant to tackle climate change.
We as young people should be included more and should be given a lot of chances to actually articulate our issues with regards to climate change.
We must make sure that everything we do is for climate equity and climate justice.
They need to be aware of all the affairs that are actually happening. So we need to create platforms for them so that they get to be exposed and also understand that they are also partners in driving sustainable development.
Because that's how we'll know we matter. My message to all the children, all the youth, all the adults, all the elderly, even the toddlers is you can be the change. You can be the change the world is looking for right now.
Because at the end of the day, we have a future to protect and we've got an environment to protect as well.
Climate change is an issue. In fact, it's a defining issue. And we're living at a defining moment. And we are the ones who will define how we created this revolution and how we put an end to climate change. My name is Yande Banda and I'm 15 years old.
Let's get to be responsible and stand out.
So really for me, it's all about youth. And it starts and it's going to be led by you. Simple as that. So Rose, over to you.
Thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions here. So let's start with this one. So thank you very much for the great insight on sustainability. What are the engagement opportunities beyond the classroom through centers and other institutes to get a feel of the material learned? Do you have any ideas on where we can be sending students outside of AUS to be getting some experience?
And I'm going to be very, very honest. We are, if you look at Europe, you look at the US, there are so many things you can do, so many places you can go to. We are in some ways limited by what we could do outside. Obviously it is hot. That's part of the issue. But also I think in many ways we are still in our infancy here in the region. I think we're still trying to find our feet. We're seeing some big shifts. So for example, in Saudi, we saw the launch of the Saudi Green Initiative earlier on this year, and that's a huge, huge initiative. There are NGOs here which are focused on sustainability. So a good example probably would be Goom Book, and I'm happy to put it in the chat. So GOUM Book. There's a couple of others. I know, for example, the Federal Statistics Center is doing work on sustainability, and there are big events as well. But in terms of getting your hands in, I think the first place to look really is to go on the internet. There are a lot of good resources there. Rose, I'm sure will be able to guide you because AUS is doing some brilliant work in terms of embedding sustainability into the curriculum, but then also keeping the conversation going. And I think the other thing as well, reach out to companies, reach out to people who work in sustainability focused companies. If I think about some of the organizations here, I know some brilliant people, you'll know them as well, Rose, Priya Sama, for example, at Unilever. There are others who are really trying to push and trying to advocate for change, so reach out to them. You could find so many resources online, but again, we do need to try and create like-minded groups where pandemic permitting, once this is sort of getting to the end, where we can sit down, we can meet, and then we can also work towards change and also taking actions for change.
Great, and I will just say that our office works with the for those interested. Our office does collaborate with the internship offices in the different colleges. Whenever we get an opportunity that someone's looking for something, we pass that on to the internship office, and so they have those opportunities there. So yesterday we talked about bold actions, and I have a question for you. Would Schneider Electric ever think about including a criteria for employment to be knowledge of sustainability development, something that is a skill or something that is on each one of your job descriptions for entry-level people, so that people understand and see that that is a priority of the organization?
I would very much hope so. That is one area that we look at in great deal. One thing I'd also add as well, all our executives have sustainability KPIs. So if we don't hit, or they don't hit their sustainability KPIs, then they do not get their bonuses. So it is part of the business discussion. And what is also interesting is, looking at the sort of the wider ecosystem. Now there's more banks which are focused on financing sustainability. There is more discussion, in places like Europe and the US on issues around energy efficiency. Because sustainability shouldn't be seen as a cost center. It should actually be seen as a profit center. The more sustainable you are, the more efficient you run, the less it costs you as well to run. And even if you look at the circular economy, it's actually thinking about what you are producing in terms of waste. And for you, maybe this is waste, but for others, it's going to be something of value. So how can you try and keep those items essentially in the value chain? So there are so many elements to think about whereby you can get creative. But the first place you've got to start with is education. And I think that's where we are still very much focusing on right now in our region. How do we educate our supply chain? How do we skill them up? How do we engage with customers in terms of things around energy efficiency? And again, not looking at this as a cost, but actually as something which will create value for them as well as society and their customers. And that's where many of us are focusing right now.
Fantastic. So we also have a question regarding the last video. Thank you very much for the great insight on sustainability. What are the, oh, no, sorry. The screen moved on me. Okay, next one. So based on the last video, if true, how much do you agree that in order to tackle climate change, human economy needs to slow down?
It's a hard one to answer. If in terms of slowing down the human economy, you've got to think about what is the impact on sustainable development. And if you look at the SDGs, the environment is one element, but then you've got poverty, you've got hunger, you've got issues such as gender equality, education. And the people behind the SDGs are some of the smartest people on the planet. They realized that development is fundamental to becoming more sustainable and becoming more environmentally aware. So going back, for example, to the issue of access to energy, you've got 1 billion people who don't have access to regular power. And we're even seeing it in places like Lebanon because of the economic situation there. Can you imagine how Lebanon would be right now if we had more solar panels on buildings linked into solar inverters, linked into batteries, essentially ending the reliance on the grid? And that really is about development. It's not about slowing down the economy. I don't think we need, in a way, to slow down the economy. We've got to think about how do we shift how we look at the economy and how we do business to think about how we can promote sustainable change and sustainable growth. If think, for example, about us, for us, it's a huge business opportunity, looking at developing access to energy. It's not something which is going to be huge margins, but it's about giving people access to life-changing energy. For example, lights at night, something as simple as that. Having a fridge, having, for example, washing machines, so you're not spending 2-3 hours a day washing your clothing. All of these things change lives dramatically, and they make societies wealthier. They make them better off, and they can focus on different issues.
Absolutely. So we have one more question here. Which skills are considered to be essential when it comes to sustainability in Dubai? So which skill sets do you have any examples of skills that that you guys are really looking for?
Sustainability in Dubai. I think you've got to be creative in terms of sustainability here. We are still at our infancy. If I look, say, at Scandinavia, where it's a really well-understood concept, even in the US, where President Biden is hopefully going to pass the infrastructure bill, which is going to be very much focused on the green economy, or in the European Union, they know where they're going. I think here the challenge is to try and help people understand again what sustainability can be used for. Great. I think we're still going through that journey right now. We are going to get there, but creative in terms of what you can do, how you can do it, and just joining those dots together, and making people see that it isn't, again, it's not a cost. It's not something which is, I think people have this idea about tree huggers and everything else, but it really is about creating value for them and for society as well. So it's a win-win.
Fantastic. Well, Alex, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great conversation and we really appreciate it. So thank you. And I would like to welcome Dr. Susan Mumm to our new chancellor to close out the series today and to share with us her thoughts. So welcome, Chancellor Mumm. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure to join you, even if it's only at the end of these 2 days of webinars. And I think I should thank all participants for their commitment and their energy and their involvement in what is the issue that will define our century. And not long before I left Canada for UAE, I was talking to Maud Barlow, who you may or may not have heard of. She is the woman who led the fight at the United Nations to make access to water a human right. She's a very dear friend of mine. And we were talking about the crisis and the sense that we as a planet have gone beyond the tipping point. And how do we talk to the upcoming generation, not just about our failures, but about how there is still hope. And Maud's new book is actually called Still Hopeful, Lessons from a Lifetime of Activism. And she and I talked in a way that I think echoes really strongly what the message has been in AUS's work and the work that's been discussed here. That what is going to be our next big audacious goal? We have tried as a society, as a planet, to just accept every innovation, adopt every innovation, and the devil take the hindmost in terms of who suffers the consequence of the loss of rights to clean air, the loss of rights to clean water, the denial of technology, the apartheid that has been created unwittingly, perhaps, around the world between those who have access to a clean, safe environment and those who do not. And so how can we, first of all, starting where we are, how can we as a university challenge ourselves that we are going to set some goals for ourselves that are tough and that are difficult? And we've begun good work, but we shouldn't ever think that we're doing enough. And when we talk to our students, I think the fundamental question for our students is, what is the good life? And if they need to examine that question very, very deeply in an attempt to move away from a simple materialistic, consumeristic answer, which our societies have wittingly and unwittingly encouraged for generations, to questions where as they walk across the stage at graduation and they leave us and they're asking, how do I live my values about sustainability and preservation of this world? Not just in my personal life, but how do I influence my workplaces? How do I live my values both at home and work, and sustainability, and not just talking about sustainability, but contributing to sustainability, and in some senses, sacrificing for sustainability are fundamental values. And so, we want to graduate students who expect more of themselves, who demand more of the societies and the cultures around them. But what they're expecting more of and what they're demanding more of is a commitment to produce less and a commitment to consume less. That is the next big lesson that the world has to learn. We need to teach it at every level, as many of the speakers have mentioned. And I just want to close by saying thank you all for your attendance and your commitment. And thank you to the AUS Teaching and Learning Group and Sustainability Group for organizing this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mom. We really appreciate it. And again, thank you to all of the speakers today, to Alex and to Dr. Maria, to Catherine and to Mohammed. Thank you so much. Narita, I'll hand it off to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Rose. I just want to echo what Rose just said. Thank you so much, Dr. Mom, for joining us. We know how busy you are. So we are very grateful to hear that you are very supportive of the initiative that we're doing here. So thank you for doing that. And again, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you for all our panelists. Thank you, Alex. We hope to see you again in our next event. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Maria.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everybody, for being here.